in this day and age, everyone and their mothers has an AI this, that, and a third. Me personally, I tend to lean into the camp of, you know what, AI is not as much AI as people think. A lot of it's automations. Regardless, the common thing that I see, especially in the accounting arena, is that we try to build these tools around rule sets, but it doesn't really tend to really form fit a lot of the solutions that are needed because there are logic bits and just overall fit to specific companies that are missing, right? And so today I'm joined by Erin Kim, CEO of Mesh. Mesh, Mesh. Erin, you want to say a quick hello?
Hi everyone, my name is Erin. I'm the founder and CEO of Mesh. I spent around 6-ish years at a company called Carta, more on the fund accounting side, building in-house general ledgers and all the accounting workflows on top of it. And now I'm taking a lot of that learnings and applying it to my own company, Mesh.
And I definitely want to deep dive into that because I think that is incredibly important. Um, but for those who have never heard of you or your company, before we get into the company side, right? Could you provide me with a little more context so that people understand who it is that is sitting here before them?
you know, describe myself as a children or child of immigrants. So I immigrated to the United States when I was in fourth grade with my parents, and actually saw them build a business of their own from the ground up. And I think that was and is transformational to how I'm building this company. I'm also approaching it from an angle of knowing what it takes, but also knowing what it takes to fail and actually get back up. And the resiliency that requires most entrepreneurs to keep going, showing up every single day when things are good, when things are bad. So that's a little bit of who I am. I'm also, I love writing. I recently did a post about this, and I have a writing minor, even though it is often masked by my business degree from the B school. So it's a little bit of who I am.
This is something where I do find myself kind of looking at it at, I guess, almost like a Tale of Two Cities type situation, right? Um, a lot of the parents in our generation, um, come from an immigrant background, um, and for me, it's interesting because there is a dichotomy that I see. A lot of times, our parents had no choice really, or the options were limited in that a lot of our parents were not just going to go and say, "Hey, I'm going to go work for a Fortune 100 or Fortune 500 companies." It turns into like, "Hey, like if we're going to make this work, we have to figure out our own path one way or another. One way or another, we need to find our own path, and usually that is we start a business, figure out how to make it work if we can, sink or swim, and all that jazz." And as I see, kids again within my generation, the usual context is becoming or has become, hey, we busted our asses, we almost killed ourselves trying to get this business running so that you don't have to do it,
Hmm.
so that you could
Yeah.
go to college, get an education, work corporate job somewhere or in a hospital, whatever have you, and so that you could live
Hmm.
this cush life. Um, what I'm seeing is there are a lot of kids in that, I'm going to call it kids. Meanwhile, we're in our 30s and 40s and up, right? But it turns into
Still kids at
right,
heart.
and it's a weird split, right? Because on the one hand, I do see some of our cohorts, and they're just sitting there like,
Hmm.
yeah, you know what? No, I'm going to go back into business. And sometimes from the parents' perspective, it's like, no, don't do that. And the other side of it is we see a bunch of folks who went through corporate, and some of them do well. The others split off and saying, I know this is what my parents wanted for me, and I'm miserable. This is like the most horrendous thing. And there's wide range, right? There's a whole gamut of. But can you walk me through? Because I do recall seeing somewhere that your parents, yeah, and for me, it's like a lot of parents start this again, and I think I recall somewhere you're like, you know what? I saw my parents go through this, and from an early age, I decided this is what I want to do, right? Where is like what is it about that journey? You seeing your parents' journey, like where does that fit into how you decide to evolve throughout your years?
Yeah. I mean, I guess long story short, my parents never once told me to go into business. My dad actually said, as most Asian parents do, I should be a doctor because business is really hard and business is really unpredictable. And there's always going to be a market for doctors and during recessions and the highs. Um, I don't know why, but I kept getting pulled into business. Even during high school, I went to this high school called Bergen County Academies, and um, at the young age of seventh grade or eighth grade, rather, you had to choose which of the seven academies that you wanted to be in. So there was medical, science, engineering, business, theater, art, so and so. So I think I decided at a young age that I wanted to be in business, gave it a try, and I actually ended up really liking it. I liked learning about economics. I liked accounting, actually, even back then. And I think kind of going through those paths, I did actually do the traditional investment banking path right out of college, just because management consulting and investment banking, at least back then when I was in college, was the top track, and that's where all the smartest and the brightest go. Do your 2 years, go to private equity, and then the path writes itself. I think when I got into banking, while I did enjoy the analytical aspects, I really craved the creative aspects and I undermined how much creativity was inside of me. And I think a lot of people don't give credit to the fact that a lot of entrepreneurship and building a business and building a product involves a ton of creativity. So then that led me into tech, still in finance, doing strategic finance. And even then, I was like, okay, I actually want to fix a lot of the things that I'm doing in the FP&A and accounting world. So then I partnered more closely with the platform product team, and then that eventually landed me a job in the product on the fund accounting side of things at Carta.
I think back on the early beginnings of how most people get into accounting, finance, and things of that nature. And I always kind of find myself giggling to myself because, on the one hand, people always ask why. Well, why accounting? Why finance? And I think that back to my early years, and it's this like you give these answers that you feel like you're supposed to give. Oh, accounting is fascinating. I love accounting. I love debits and credits. Da, da, da. I'm like, you're so full of crap, right? But and then I had to sit and think about this, right? And because now I'm talking to a lot more kids who are just going through their process, of like, think about why you want to do this. And within my friend
Hmm.
groups, usually it's like the honest answer is there's job security, right? I hear
Hmm.
that it's very secure in terms of your career path and trajectories and all that, but your income is also pretty stable and you could earn pretty well. The other side of it becomes it may not be that accounting per se is sexy, right? And when I thought through it, it's like, well, I honestly went to this path because I took business as a general thing, and I figured, you know what, I'm not studious enough to be going through a medical track. I just learned that early on that
Hmm.
is just not for me, and
Yeah.
I realized that as I went through my gen eds, accounting for whatever reason just it clicked, right? And
Hmm.
it wasn't,
Everything
yeah,
balances.
right, and
That feeling.
that feeling that like, oh, I got it to work, and I realized it wasn't necessarily the accounting; it was the fact that it's a puzzle. It's this understanding of logic versus systems, and where if I get it to work, this puzzle works. And for me, I guess that was the thing, and it wasn't that I loved accounting because in my heart I was like, accounting isn't sexy. It is. It's not sexy. It's not something where I wake up. Well, me personally, right? There's wise. And now I'm in a situation where throughout my career I realized, hey, most of the jobs I've done, I might have hated the work itself, but it's the process of building
Hmm.
something where now the logic makes sense. It works better. Like,
Yeah.
and I feel when you have, yeah, when I look through your quick LinkedIn, this is what I did, this is what I worked on. What it read to me was you were like neck deep in the process of getting things to work, and I'm assuming you've had incredible instances where like, hey, I'm sure it maths out, and you look into it like, wait, hold up. This math isn't mathing, and it's only mathing because you guys are like force feeding things that shouldn't fit, right? And is how much how much of that has guided your path towards building what Mesh is today?
So much. I mean, that is the reason why I'm building Mesh in entirety. So when I was in FP&A, I would say we would spend around at least a week and a half up to 2 weeks reconciling the revenue figures from that we pulled from Looker and then exporting it into Google Sheets, which I'm sure you can resonate with, and then actually going through row by row and checking it against the actual order forms that our sales team sent out. Because for whatever reason, the data, like you said, isn't mathing, and I had to check with my own two eyes, basically what an OCR technology does today. And then I was to OGAI basically. And I'm sure I can guarantee you that a lot of analysts and associates and even more senior folks are doing this based on the conversations that I'm having. So that was the first arena or area where I felt like something's broken. As I pivoted into fund accounting on the product side, I kept seeing these. And what we call these work papers in Excel are clear gaps where systems are not talking to each
Mhm.
other. And therefore, the best way to reconcile, the best way to transform that data gap
Mhm.
is Excel, is Google Sheets, is human eyes. So I think those instances all combined led me to found Mesh. And there's actually a reason to why we called Mesh. Mesh happens to be the material that kind of mesh, it can be a verb and it could be a material, but it just felt really fitting because we want to mesh data together, mesh information. And that's exactly kind of what we're here to do.
You gave me like partial PTSD and like I like chills. I have chills. I mean, because well, I've seen various ranges of this, right? From the small business owner who they're just trying to get their books together, right?
Yeah,
And when I say small, it's not the hey, I made $200,000. It's like hey, I made $10 million, and I have thousands of transactions, and I use QuickBooks. And the problem here is I took a 30-second clip of how it's supposed to work, and then I ship it off to my account, and my accountant's cursing me out now. Right? It's like what the hell have you like? This isn't usable. Well, I mean, the numbers match. No, 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 no. Right? And then I've looked at billion-dollar companies where on a recurring basis, it's in the past, there's this almost mark of pride. Hey, if you're in this company long enough, you know what transactions are supposed. You kind of understand the logic of where things are supposed to go. So when numbers don't meet, yeah, and it's like, well, what if that person leaves, or what if they get fired, or God forbid something happens, and like, what happens then? Well then, the standard answer is look through the previous month's, year's work papers and try to work out the logic.
exactly. Yeah. Trace back the
Right,
formulas,
and
um,
that's
look at the
look at the
comments.
comments and find any notes. But what happens if that other person had no notes? Now you're
Hmm.
guessing, you're hoping to find this logic, and like, well, it looks like it. Like the thing that drives me crazy, it's because we did it. This is how we did it in the past.
Yeah.
Okay, well, where's like for me in my brain, I have a little bit of that audit thing that just chimes in like, well, based on what? Like, how am I supposed to work this
Hmm.
out? Now, do I have to go in this billion dollar company? You had multiple sites, different departments. Within departments, you had different divisions. And within divisions, you had different sites. And the sites had different. They're supposed to work and operate on the same codex or decoder ring.
Hmm.
But when you have, I think this particular expenditure should be this classification, and the other side decides going to do it
Yeah.
this way. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And for me, this is where I think things also become problematic because hey, we have maybe one SAP system here, you have
Hmm.
another thing over there, and now everything truncated down to an Excel that lives on someone's computer at some site somewhere at some point.
Yeah. Hmm.
And every time, inevitably, when we say, hey, all the systems talk to each other, and we should just be able to import the data, and we should be able to chug away. And then you realize, well, that only works when your decoder ring is identical, and it only
Yeah.
works if the logic is there. And for me, where I
Hmm.
have seen,
Written
yeah,
down.
and this is where I see like a lot of these AI tools where they fall apart is we understand how the rule sets are supposed to be as defined by a gap. Perfect. Except you forgot to import the logic of that company on how they, and you could talk about if it's right or wrong, whatever. But at the very least, when you mesh all these things together, it's not a cohesive mesh. It's a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
you know, and I think this
You have to catch all the junk.
right. And
It's like a filtration.
oh, but that's exactly for me. It's that filtration is important, but the problem here becomes if that filtration system doesn't have the proper filter, it just gets clogged up by garbage. Right? Think about any possible drain. If it gets clogged up, nothing gets done, and now you're dealing
Hmm.
with a cesspool of stuff that now you have to. And then as people, when I talk to people who have tried different tools, like, oh, it's garbage. It doesn't work. I mean, why? I'm not saying you're right and wrong. I believe you, but why? And they're like, well, we know how our systems are supposed to work. We know what the answer is supposed to be. And so if we were to say, hey, we gave them a test run based off of previous financials, for instance, that we know are correct, but we try to plug in the raw information to see can this tool do it, and it doesn't work, and we tease it apart. What was the reason? And like we realized that oftentimes it's just operating off of generic rule sets that some engineer who didn't really work in finance or accounting, and they understand like there is variability from business to business. There is a variability from corporation to corporation, and different teams have different logic. And if you don't import that or codify it in some way, now the logic of, well, we still need all our analysts now because now they need to reverse engineer.
Do the workarounds.
Right. And now it's like you didn't solve anything really, because
Yeah,
we're back to square one. Now this AI thing,
totally.
right? And so at what point was this the driving factor of how you ran the your company? Because for me, I think that's one of the biggest aha moments of like, hey, because look, I've been to the Fate Expo and they're like, oh, we automate this, automate this, automate this. We have intelligence that will identify all these things. And from when I look at Mesh, it appears to me, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is where it appears that you guys are putting a lot of effort into understanding the justification, the logic specific to each of your clients or your users. Can you kind of like unpack that for me?
Yeah, totally. I think you captured the essence of it. What we have seen both at Carta and even doing finance myself is you can't expect a system to pretty much replace you from 0 to 100. We're just not there yet. Even as AI continues to get better, I do believe that last 10% or even last 5% has to, just by audit standards, has to get rubber stamped and approved by humans. So what we're trying to do is how can we essentially get you to that 80% work by doing the data mapping across systems, gathering and aggregating different data points, doing all the index matching and VLOOKUPs that you would normally do, presenting you with the first set of drafts, and then letting the reviewers, who maybe once were preparers, essentially check the output with the auditability and the evidence that we're also gathering for you. So that's kind of the biggest difference. And then the other difference is what you were talking about. How do we actually let you codify what's in, your analyst or associate's brain, or even in your brain? So that that resiliency is built from the organizational standpoint, so that one person isn't doing the accruals and then that person leaves and you have to either recreate the process, recreate the worksheet, recreate the entire logic from the scratch, but it is encoded in mesh so that when you hire that next person, or when you have that replacement, you can essentially continue to scale, continue to operate without putting your entire close at risk. So that those are the two key differentiators that we're really putting to use at Mesh.
At what point was that something that was a light bulb moment for you? Because I imagine you guys could have just been like, hey, here's
Mhm.
another AI automation tool, and I mean, like for me, it's fascinating because I think in my brain that maybe it's just because the conversations that I've had, that seems to be the Achilles heel of a lot of other creators, right? Like, how did you guys get into like that delineation?
I think a lot of the learnings that we had from working together at Cardat. So two things or examples come to mind without divulging too much of the company's secrets. Um, First was we saw, so my co-founder Nandini and I, she and I worked on the same pod that own different types of workflows. So we built around 50 plus in-house workflows that specifically fund accountants do on a quarterly basis to prepare the financials. Very similar to month-end close, just on a quarterly basis for funds. And what we have seen is a lot of times every single workflow would be written as a YAML file. And they would essentially say, hey, for XYZ clients, though, this workflow doesn't work because they have this XYZ nuance, or they have this specific fund property and a side letter that creates this set of exceptions, or the GP, the general partner, wants this, specific formatting to be presented to them because they just want that, and we have to cater to that. So that's when I realized, okay, so one size fits all clearly does not work. That's why software breaks. And what AI allows us to do is finally plug those last mile gap that was previously too expensive because it required too much engineering. So I think that's really where AI is transformational, not necessarily in replacing and actually doing the accounting, but plugging the customization that software needs to essentially adapt to so that the different organizations with different contexts and different needs can actually take advantage of the software being built. So that's the first example. The other example is, and this is something that's used by a lot of organizations, but what we call DSL. So it's shortened for domain specific language. And for us, that would be accounting specific language, different primitives that we can build. So instead of just saying, hey, we do accruals, we do prepaids, we do these generic calculations that anyone really can do as long as the policy or the formulas are written, we actually go a step further and we say, hey, these are the building blocks that you can then utilize. And then once again, utilize AI to make it your own. So we're kind of setting the accounting teams up to fully leverage all these Legos and build their own castle or whatever the structure that they need to actually complete their own month end close. And we're actually seeing teams do this already. Like every time I go on LinkedIn, another accountant is building their entire month end close platform with different Python scripts, and it's really cool. Now the problem is, how do you actually make that iteratable? How do you make that auditable? How do you make that multiplayer? So that's kind of the area that we work in the next mile.
But Erin, if you add in all of these abilities to custom tailor and all this, I mean, surely they're gonna be there's gonna be so much risk in terms of violating accounting principles and audit principles and laws and regulations. I mean, it's impossible, right?
I wouldn't say it's impossible. I think that because of the building blocks that we're creating, the building blocks in itself are already auditable, and we try to, comply with the gap standards, audit standards. And what the accounting teams are doing is taking that to the next level and actually adding the customization. So it's not like you're starting from blank scratch all the time, which I would say is kind of a necessity when you're building with Claude code and you're kind of building in an empty canvas. But how do we actually get you to that 50% mark, 80% mark, so that you can take it to 100%? And all you have to do is that last 20% on mesh. So that's how I've been thinking about it.
Yeah, and this is where I love these conversations because I mean, really, there's I think it's like almost a faulty logic kind of situation where it's I think people think in complete polar opposites where like it's either all or nothing or it's like it's not that binary, right? I mean, you could, and I think this is where also I think a lot of companies fail, right? Because they think, hey, either it has to be 100% reproducible, if that's a real word, right? And it has to be a very clean standard, otherwise our workload becomes never ending because there's all these customizations. I'm like, I think that's kind of why we want AI, isn't it? So that we could have some semblance of custom tailoring and
Yeah.
still have a rigid enough structure where you're not breaking laws, right? Quite frankly, right? And this is where it's interesting. Let's take a little quick step back, right? So, what is it that Mesh specifically is trying to solve for? Like, what is it that you guys like? Where do you fit in an organizational structure? Like, how does it fit? Like, what is it that you guys are doing?
Yeah, so there's obviously a lot of different examples of where different systems do not talk to each other, and you see those gaps in between. Um, where we're starting today is actually in the expense accruals arena. So we specifically target mid-market and enterprise accounting teams that have hundreds of employees, thousands or upwards of thousands of vendors, and they're doing the same exercise, typically in the pre-close steps leading up to month end, where they're pulling purchase orders from procurement systems, invoices, trying to do that index match based on a common shared field, and then also doing the outreach to vendors and internal stakeholders, sitting down with FP&A. It's a whole journey that typically takes potentially upwards of 5 to 7 days. And by then you're already, 2 days into close, still scrambling because that's the first starting point, first domino that kicks off the month end close. So that's where we start today. The goal is once we essentially get into the rinse and repeat and build this infrastructure of how do we actually pull the data, map the data, and actually allow people to iterate on that logic and edit it and collaborate? How can we take that and apply it to prepaids and allocations and revenue and all of the different types of accruals that month end typically is structured and comprises of? So that's the journey of Mesh so far.
Goodness gracious. And this is the also iteration of like, hey, look, man, you know, I know a lot of people are building all these fancy, sexy AI, these, that, this, that, and a third, but for anyone who has worked corporate, the most grueling, soul sucking, and probably in a lot of ways costly portions of operating a business is exactly that. The boring, monotonous, tedious, just painstaking process of, hey, are our records complete? Are they correct? Are
Yeah.
they properly categorized? And is it organized in a way where we can actually pull useful information,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I know I spent a good part of my career in that FP&A realm, and it is. I know I'm using this very widely, and PTSD is a real thing, but there is. Whenever I think of FP&A, the amount of time it took to just clean up the data and just get it in a forget the reporting portions of it, just getting it to a point where it's coherent and uniform. Like, these are our standards. Will it actually get to our standards? That cleanup process was, oh, those are the days where I'm like, my brain is just melting by the end of the day. It was just like, it was the worst, right? And so for me, for you guys to jump into this and also bring in that, hey, we understand through all these years of experience, we understand that not all processes are exactly the same, right? So when you oversimplify, like, hey, this is a debit, this is a credit, this is an asset, this is a, right, and this is where I'm excited, because you could have just been a company that just said, hey, we built this new tool, come believe us, give me $1 million and let's move on, right? It appears to me that you guys have made a conscious effort to really throw yourselves to the wolves. I mean, you've done a lot of presentation. Like, I've seen a lot of stuff. You guys have been really active in terms of presenting what mesh is, right? And I don't. Maybe it's the blinders that I have on. I don't see it to the level that you guys have done it. And for me, that it feels to me of like, hey, if we're full of crap, let us know. But we're going
Yeah.
to really show you that this works, instead of just saying theoretically, give me money and right.
Yeah, I guess now that you say that, that's just a way that I've always built product. So I worked with our 300 person, sometimes at one point it was upwards of 400 internal accountants. And the way that I build product is actually really collaborative with them. I never go in claiming that I know everything about accounting, everything about expense accruals, anything about, all of these accounting processes, but I do bring my own product perspective and they bring their own domain expertise. And together, it was always a together thing where we shipped every single feature, whether it was a workflow or a general ledger feature or audit feature at Carta. So to me, I'm taking that same philosophy at Mesh, and my people, because I don't have a 300 person accounting team, are my customers. So I bring them along the journey of building, because without them, without their input, there is no product, there is no enhancement. So that's kind of how I've been also approaching these competitions, where it gives me an opportunity to showcase the product, get feedback from CPAs and folks actually in the field, in the accounting teams, living the day to day. And yeah, that's just how I've seen it. It's just another opportunity to get feedback, to actually make something that people want, to quote YC.
But did you? I mean, for me, the other side of it is, well, did you have to go, you know, into these like South by Southwest type things and really like got to pitch your company? Like, was that necessary? Like, what do you say to people who just always have to like nitpick?
Yeah, I think you never want to underestimate who like you're going to meet at these
Mhm.
conferences, right? one, you get the exposure. So as a up and coming company, you have to take every advantage to get the company, word out there. Because if you don't actually talk about the problem that you're solving, the people who have that problem are not going to know. So it's kind of like opening a hot dog stand, as a mentor of mine likes to kind of use an analogy. If people are hungry out there and they don't know about a hot dog stand in the park, they're not going to be able to get to you, and they're not going to be able to actually take advantage of the product that you're selling. So I think it's a huge misconception that potentially a lot of founders, first time founders have, where, if the product's good, people are going to come find you. I mean, as somebody who has been in-house and been sold these products as the FP&A person, I think it's really hard to do your day job and also stay in touch with every single product that's coming out in the market on LinkedIn and all that. So I think it's really nice if vendors find you and tell you exactly why they're differentiated, why, you should give them a chance. So that's exactly kind of what I'm doing on the other side.
Oh, I love it. You got me. You got me fanboying. I mean, and for me, I worked on the R&D tax credit side, right? Most recently,
Hmm.
and for me, what I realized was there's a hesitance from the decision makers in terms of not only like what is the price tag, but like more than that, what is the overall cost, right? What is and what usually ends up being the recurring thing. It was like, look, I understand what the contract price and all that is. Like, that's not what I'm asking. What is my investment in terms of my personnel, my employees, my time, like my
Yeah.
right? So, is there a? I'm sure there's variability because look, not only no company works exactly the same, but is there a general process in which that you guys tend to see more often in terms of like onboarding a new customer or things like that?
Yeah, so we try to keep onboarding as shortened as possible, but we don't sandbag and say, "Hey, you're going to be, up and ready in days," because there is, to your earlier point, a period of time where we have to, one, do all the system integrations, and two, confirm those system integrations are working. And what we're finding actually takes the most amount of time is looking at the data fields that we're getting from your database or the actual procurement system that you're using, your ERP, and realizing there's 5 fields called price. So actually sitting down with the team and being like, "Hey, which fields should we actually be using?" Because you have a lot of duplicate fields, and we actually have to do some data cleansing and uniforming. And then the piece is actually sitting down with the accounting team and taking what's in their heads and writing down as policy, which then turns into scripts and code, and the thing that they actually then continue to run on a monthly cadence. So we try to do it around 4 to 5 weeks, and then that way they can get the product up and running by the time of next close. Maybe do a parallel close depending on their risk tolerance, and then that's how we work with the finance and accounting teams today.
And so now that we got, well, I say this with a grain of salt because usually I find that hey, like we're changing the way we do things, and arguably it's the correct
Hmm.
way to to do things. But there's always that one person who just didn't get that memo of like I'm still gonna code this the
Yeah.
way I want to code it. Um, is there like an in between phase where we're just kind of do like well, I guess you did mention there was like an A/B test almost, right? Of like these are right, and I guess there's like a test retest situation of like, hey, like based off of usually I'm assuming it's the leadership that's making these decisions of like, hey, okay, we agree
Yeah.
that going forward, these are the adjustments that we're going to make, right? And
Hmm.
afterwards, there is, hey, like we noticed that some people are just not getting with the program. Um, is there a monitoring process just to say like, hey, like just based off of what we were expecting, based off of these new procedures that we agreed upon, we see this percentage that is still not quite lining up. Is that something that you
Hmm.
guys are monitoring in house, or is it kind of like, hey, like client XYZ, like this is kind of your job to handle on your own? Like, how much is it?
Yeah. We actually allow, and this is goes back to how we're differentiated. We don't basically just one time produce the results, like for instance Claude does, right? So if you ask, "Hey Claude, here's my context. Can you give me a prepaid schedule, or can you give me an accruals output?" They'll give you the output, and then you have to essentially take that offline into Sheets or Excel and edit it. What we're doing is, "Hey, we're giving you the output. And you can continue to compare that against, let's say, your manual processes for the first go around. However, for the things that are not entirely correct, or maybe there's a piece of logic that you have to continue to refine, we actually allow the overrides in app and make every single override by the group of preparers auditable. So every override that you make is essentially a clue for the AI to essentially then correct itself the next go around. So it's actually a self-evolving, self-healing process over the months. And then that's how the logic continues to keep up to date instead of being this static one-time Python script that doesn't iterate.
Interesting. And so let's say, I'm if it hasn't happened yet, I'm sure it's going to happen where they start tinkering and it becomes like a slippery
Mhm.
slope, and then they realize, oh Jesus Christ, we've made a mess of things. Is there a way for us to say, like, you know what? We realized that we thought we were being clever, and our cleverness
Mhm.
has cost us 6 months of like just slop. Is there a way to say, like, you know what, we
Mhm.
want to go back to that 6 month logic, like the logic from 6 months ago, and kind of like try to undo this miss that we made since?
There is a way. I think that once again is a slippery slope because especially with the accruals, we actually have a period
Mhm.
lock. So we, as soon as like the month end close is good to go, and you've kind of move on from the accrual step, we try to essentially lock it the period, so that only the super admins can actually unlock it and go back in time and make edits. So while it is doable, I would say that then causes a whole downstream of effects, which I'm sure you're too familiar
Mhm.
with, where you have to potentially reopen the books. And depending on how enterprise you are, that then causes restatements and so forth, and potentially a huge amount of audit risk. So definitely not recommended, but it is something that we can work with the teams on.
So this, I mean, I actually love this because it's one of those things of like, hey, just as a reminder, you still need to kind of know what you're doing and still have some semblance of intelligence in terms of this specific, like your job.
100%. Yeah. And I think the one of the things that I resonated with and was really transformational to how we're or foundational to how we're building is we're actually building control layer on top of what AI is producing. So AI and baseline LLM models continue to get better, they're going to continue to get smarter and produce more and more accurate results. Well, and of course, write better code and the scripts that are generating the outputs. Where we come in is actually making sure that the human editable components or the auditability components of control is in place to keep keep the outputs in check by the human. So how do you actually turn that into a task that then ping pongs between preparers and reviewers and then ultimately gets approved, and every single task or every single line is completely auditable.
Cool. My prior years, the building of stuff, tools, and all that jazz was a brutally painful task. And, and the idea that you guys are doing this at scale is quite impressive, right? Because I know there are going to be people who's going to try to poo-poo the efforts because, hey, you have AI in your back pocket and it's supposed to simplify a lot of things. Yeah, yeah. Try doing that yourself for your own company, and then try to do it with 15 different companies that kind of rhyme but they have critical nuances. Have fun with that, and then tell me that it's easy. Have fun, right? And so every time, my brain still breaks because on a conceptual basis, I understand. Look, AI has made things a lot easier, and you can automate things. And again, a lot of the grueling task was the ability to recognize where the breaks in the system are, like being able to apply logic such
Yeah.
that you can say, hey, something doesn't add up here, and being able to clean. But that is such a painful process. I cannot get past that. And this is why I think the product solutions that you guys are coming up with is, quite frankly, really interesting, right? I think this is where
Yeah.
it's often underestimated and underappreciated. But when for me in my brain, it's like, in this perfect world, we just click go, and like all of the most soul sucking work is automatically, or at least the brunt of it is like clean. Like you just see the gates of
Yeah.
heaven open, like angels are singing, and this is like where my nerd brain goes. I don't. It's not the hey, like we have this thing that'll automatically decipher all your financials and suddenly give you like a 10-year prospectus, and no, like this is like, you know that
No, no.
pain.
we're very practical, I would say. Let's say if you're accruing 2,000 vendors for a given month, we turn every single one of those 2,000 rows into a task. So what we're doing is we're basically saying, hey, 1,500 of those, because of the rules that you set in place, there's no action needed. We actually took care of the high confidence folks or tasks, and all you have to do is remaining 500. And of those remaining 500, we've actually further categorized into this bucket. Like, for instance, like invoice has arrived, but we need your approval on those. Can you review the 30? For the remaining 50, XYZ reason has flagged it. Can you review those? So we're very taking a practical approach and not a one-time magic goal wand, but making sure that the efficiency stays in place so that you can do your process a lot faster than you are doing today.
How often are you finding as you go through this process with your clients, um, where they're realizing we have some serious like SOP issues? Like we have, like for instance, I see it often in terms of like POs and invoicing and things of that nature. But
Yeah.
how often is it that like, oh crap, like we realize that the reason why I have so many instances of mismatches or outlying invoices or whatever have you is because like I thought our processes were okay. It's actually a nightmare scenario.
All the time. I would say by working with us, it's actually an opportunity and something that we talk to CAOs and CFOs a lot about is an opportunity for your team to rewrite and actually create an SOP that people can action on. So going back to the whole organizational resiliency aspect, a lot of SOPs are quite high level and are written just enough that it passes the audit standards. Definitely not enough where somebody on, day one can come in and actually recreate the whole process. That is, we're talking about two different
Hmm.
artifacts. What we're creating is an artifact that you can, let's say, Alex, you come in and join a completely new accounting team and you read this and you're like, okay, I can actually understand how the logic works. And then when I press this, I can also then repeat that process without having to wrangle your brain for days and recreate a whole Excel model and all of that stuff. So yeah, to your point, 100% all the time during onboarding, during the data mapping, we're doing a lot of the cleaning work with them and actually setting up the SOP to run in a way that is repeatable.
Jesus, your value add is getting absurd.
I hope so.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I want to take like a couple steps back, right? Because the one thing that I think the resurgence of entrepreneurialism is definitely making a big comeback, right? And there are a lot more and more
Mhm.
people who are just kind of disenfranchised with corporate work or just whatever it is, or they have this idea of that just keeps them up at night. Um, Regardless of how, or maybe I'm off base here, right? Regardless of your early visions of saying, "Hey, I'm gonna run my own business one day," once you start off in corporate, I imagine you made an okay salary, right? Benefits are paid and all this jazz. When you make a decision to say, you know what, I'm kind of done with this, and I'm gonna go out on my own, what was going through your head at that point? Like, what does that dialogue look like?
I think a lot of people look at my profile, or even today, people applying to Y Combinator and just thinking about starting their own company. I think they think that it happened overnight. Um, the reality is, it actually took me 10 years to make the leap. And people who do know me, close friends and close mentors that I've talked to them about, hey, should I do this or should I work on this idea? Know how many ideas and iterations, including my co founder, who I've had to court for over a year to take the leap with me, know that there were a lot of attempts that never really got to see the light of day in the background. And then to your point, it's hard. I think when you are actually doing well and you like the team that you work on, you like the company that has kind of made it itself a home to you in San Francisco. I was actually living in New York before I joined Carta. So Carta was pretty much like second family to me. It's hard to leave all of that behind and pretty much go out on your own into this wild, wild west that is also hard from watching my parents, but also other friends who took that leap. Um, I think the thing that really helped me get over the hump is my support system. I think it really, really helped me to understand, hey, even if in the worst case scenario, it's actually not going to be worst case scenario. I'm going to actually come out of this stronger and smarter, and whatever happens next, I, I would have told myself that I did this thing that I've been working 10 years towards. So that was number one. Then number two was, I hate to quote that, such a cliche thing, but Jeff Bezos has obviously that famous philosophy where if you ask yourself, like if you look at in a 50, 60, I forget the exact number, year horizon, what would your answer be to the question? And my answer to the question, hey, should I start this company? Would I regret it when I'm 60, 70? Was such a resounding yes that if it wasn't now, it wasn't going to be for a long time. And that's why I decided that it was now or never. So
You gave up a 9 to 5, which, if I'm being honest, is probably
it was actually
yeah.
longer
I
than
was
nine
gonna
to
say
five. I'm not reclined.
you gave up the 9 to 5. Let me put it that way, for a 9 to 9 to 9 to 9 to 9. Like, it's just a never ending. I mean, what were your at this point? I imagine any entrepreneur that I've met that is like worth their salt. I mean, it's the pain threshold is always high, right? So when I ask
Mhm.
for like, hey, what are your hardest moments? Like, dude, I have a briefcase full. Like, pick one.
Which one?
It's like Pokemon cards. I have pain, like, greatest pain hits, right? But off the top of your head, what are some like the painful moments that come to mind right now?
I think because we are so early, I'm usually the primary salesperson along with my co-founder. And we're out there doing everything from building the product, iterating, taking feedback, selling, and also getting rejected. I think the rejection is hard, especially at this stage where, and I think sales is just hard in general, but unlike a salesperson who's selling, let's say, a known entity, a known product that has brand recognition, when you're putting your own product out there, it's really hard to compartmentalize whether or not they're rejecting you as a person or the product. And I think that is a mental exercise that I think we've gotten a lot better at, especially in the past 6 months or a year, but continues to be challenging. So I think I'm sure a lot of people can relate, and that applies not only to customers but also to accelerators, to competitions, to fundraising. Um, but how do you actually take those two things apart? And then whatever rejection, whatever objection that you get, how do you then use that as an opportunity to get better as a person, but also as a company, as a product, and so forth. So, yeah, that's the biggest challenge.
That does speak to me so many different ways. I mean, I mean, it's interesting because I was trained on that idea that, hey, like, accounting is everything. Everything fundamentally boils down to. But as I look at first principles, I really start to think about, like, hey, like, if I were to, like, now that I have children, it's like, hey, what would be the thing that I impart on them? And for me, it's problem solving.
Mhm.
Period. Right? And problem
Yeah.
solving expands into so many different things. And one of the things here is understanding that, yes, being able to account for things in hard cold math gives you a factual, well, assuming that is correct, a factual insight into like what's working, what's not. But the other thing is, like, sales and marketing invades everything. It does, like, right. If you want to, if you want to be an employee, still, how do you get hired? You got to market yourself. There's still a bit of salesing that happens. And I think a lot of us in that finance field or industry, we kind of feel like marketing. That's a them thing. Like, let me focus on numbers. But really, like,
It's a soft skill.
yeah. And, and now that I see more people kind of branching out and starting to get interested in other things, they're realizing with brutal, brutal learning curves of, like, hey, when people are saying I should go network, when people say I should go learn marketing, sales, and I scoffed at them because, again, finance and accounting. Well, why the hell do I care about this? Even if you're not starting the future, like, multi-billion-dollar business, they're realizing, oh wait, maybe I should have learned the fundamentals of it. And I
Hmm.
mean, based off my conversation with you last time, I think that you're definitely on. If you're not there already, I mean, you're on a killer trajectory, right? I think one of the things that got me here was that the way that you present yourself is very interesting, right? Obviously, the things that you are rolling out with the company is for me, speaks to the idea that, hey, we're not just, nerding out on our product and saying that you must you must believe in our mission, right? I think there's a thing that kind of maybe goes against a lot of maybe CPA type DNA of, you know, risk aversion. Hey, don't invite liabilities to our doorstep. Do not take chances where people
Yeah.
may perceive this as something braggadocious or whatever. I like the idea that you guys are saying, you know what, check our math. Come check us out. Like, look, if you want to talk some smack, let me know, right? Just don't do it behind like boardroom, behind closed doors and what. Just tell me to my face what's wrong, what's broken, and we'll come fix it, right? But like, that is something refreshing to me. I think that takes some balls, man. Like I don't.
Thank you. I appreciate. I mean, I think playing to open was actually a huge principle at Carta. We had these core principles that I think were ingrained in a lot of the companies, and including myself. And the way that we build product was we're gonna ship things. We're gonna make mistakes, like every human does. Pretending like your product's perfect and there's no room for improvement is probably you admitting that you don't want to make improvements. You don't want to get better. So even from the get go, we're like, hey, we're a small company. We know our limitations. We know what we're really good at and what we're also not as good at. So work with us and take a chance on us and actually help improve the product, and have some fun while doing it. So
I love that. I
that's
love that.
the message that we want to put out.
I mean, is there anything else in that like corporate cultural ethos that you feel like we missed?
Playing the open is a big one. Always be helpful was another one. I think the way that I actually won over a lot of the accounting teams collaboration was by building trust. So that's exactly the same approach that I try to take with every single one of my customers, even prospects that aren't yet customers. I try to be helpful, and just give them transparent advice. So if we're not a good fit for them, just I say it like it is from the start. Hey, we're not the best fit for the problem that you're trying to solve, but there's another product out there that is helpful. So
Erin, I know that there's going to be a lot more things I want to pick your brain on. But for now, in the interim, where can people reach out to you, find out more about you and your company?
you can reach us at on LinkedIn. So we have a mesh LinkedIn page, and then my DMs are always open on LinkedIn. I'm quite active. Otherwise, you can reach us as founders at usemesh.com. It's a open invitation whenever you have product feedback and anything that you want to collaborate with us on.
Perfect. Contact information, links, and all that will be in the description down below. Erin,
Perfect.
thank you so much for your time. If any of you guys have questions, come reach out. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
Bye.